You got a check, a real one, not a bonus, not a raise, a severance check, money you did not plan for sitting in your account, waiting. Most people spend it, not all at once, but piece by piece. A trip, some furniture, a debt here, a dinner there, and 6 months later they look at their account and wonder where it went. Some people freeze it, they park it somewhere safe, somewhere they can see it, and they tell themselves they will figure out what to do with it soon. And some people, a small number, do something different. They treat that check like a door, not a reward for what just ended, a starting point for what comes next. I was the second type first, then I became the third, and this video is about exactly how that happened. Here's what nobody tells you when you arrive in Canada, or when you have been here for 20 years, earning steadily, and still do not feel like you're getting ahead. The system is not hidden, but it is not explained either. Canada has tax-sheltered accounts that the government designed specifically to help you grow wealth without losing a cut of it to taxes every year. These accounts exist. They have your name on them, and most people either do not know they exist or they opened 1 year ago, put a small amount in, and never touched it again. By 2024, the CRA had given every eligible Canadian up to $95,000 of tax-free investment space inside the TFSA alone. $95,000 of room where your money can grow and you pay zero tax on the gains. If you have not used that room, that is not just a missed opportunity. That is a cost. Every year that money sits in a regular savings account or checking account, you are paying tax on whatever it earns, and you are giving inflation the difference. 2 years in Canada, 20 years in Canada, it does not matter. If no one walked you through this, you are both starting from the same place right now. The only version of this story that ends badly is the one where you still do not know by the time this video ends. Let me give you a few numbers that are going to reframe how you think about this. A 2023 release from Statistics Canada found that nearly half of Canadian families hold less than 1 month of expenses in liquid savings. And among newcomers specifically, the data shows a consistent pattern. It is not that they are not earning. It is that they are not plugging their money into the structures that exist to protect and grow it. Think about that for a second. This country has infrastructure built for wealth accumulation, and a large portion of people living here are not using it. The Financial Consumer Agency of Canada ran a national financial capability survey and found that roughly 32% of eligible Canadians are contributing nothing to any registered account, not the TFSA, not the rrsp, not the FHSA for first-time buyers, nothing. And the reason is almost never that they cannot afford to. The reason is that they were never taught the structure. Now here's the one that stings. The Bank of Canada has documented clearly that households keeping cash as their primary financial strategy lose real purchasing power over time. When inflation runs higher than your savings account rate, which it has done consistently, you are not protecting your money. You are slowly watching it shrink in real terms. And Vanguard's behavioral finance research adds something even sharper to this. Investors who hold cash out of fear, waiting for the right moment, the safe moment, give up on average between 1.5% and 2% in annualized returns compared to those who stay invested in diversified holdings. Over 10 years on $100,000, that gap is not small. The fear is not irrational, but the cost of acting on it is very real. I want to be honest with you about where I was when I left Abu Dhabi. I had the check, I had the experience, 2 decades across HR and strategy, oil and gas, aerospace, 4 continents. I had invested before, not just watched from the sidelines. I had been inside the Middle East markets. I had seen the Asian markets. I had learned lessons, some of them expensive ones. And when I landed in Canada, I did something that I think a lot of people with my kind of experience would also do. I parked it. Savings account. 4.5% interest at the time. Done. Safe. Visible. Mine. Was that wrong? No, I want to be clear about that. It was not wrong. It was honest. I did not know the Canadian system yet, and I have learned from losing before, so my first instinct was to protect the capital, not grow it. But here's what I also did that most people do not. I studied. I did not just leave it there and move on, I started learning what Canada actually offers: the registered accounts, the TFSA, the rrsp, the mechanics of how they shelter your money from tax while it grows. And as I understood each one, I moved the money gradually, deliberately, not all at once, because I do not trust anyone who moves fast with money they cannot afford to lose. I am also human. There were temptations. You move countries and there are things you want, comfort items, familiar things. But the discipline I built from living across different countries and understanding that things do not travel with you the way money does, that kept me grounded. I have been crushed by investments before. That is not a metaphor. I have sat with real losses, so I know the weight of moving too fast. And I also know that the bigger danger at this stage in my life, with retirement and my children's future on the table, is not moving at all. $50 invested is worth infinitely more than $0 protected out of fear. Let me walk you through exactly what I would tell someone who is holding a lump sum in Canada right now and does not know what to do with it, whether that sum is a severance, a bonus, a tax return, or savings you have been sitting on for 3 years. Step 1, park it correctly first, not permanently. If you do not know where to put money yet, a high-interest savings account is not a bad first move. It is a bad permanent move. There's a critical difference, and when I first arrived and deposited my severance, the 4.5% interest I was earning felt safe, and for a short window, it served a real purpose. It gave me time to learn without losing, but a savings account is a waiting room, not a destination. The mistake most people make is that they never leave the waiting room. They stay there for 2 years, 3 years, and then inflation has quietly taken a percentage of their real purchasing power back. So the rule is this: if you are parking money, set a deadline before you park it and tell yourself that within 60 or 90 days, you will have made at least one move into a registered account. Not necessarily with all of it, but with some of it. The deadline forces the learning. Without it, the inertia wins. A practical example: open a TFSA if you do not have one. It takes less than 15 minutes at most Canadian banks or through a brokerage. Transfer even $2,000 into it. You have now broken the psychological barrier. The rest gets easier. Step 2, learn the account hierarchy before you invest a single dollar. Canada has a specific order of operations when it comes to where your money should go. Most people have never seen this laid out clearly. Here it is. Your first priority is eliminating high-interest debt. Anything above 6 or 7% interest, typically credit cards, is a guaranteed negative return on your money. Pay that before you invest. Every dollar you put into the market while carrying a 20% credit card balance is mathematically losing ground. Your second priority is the TFSA, the tax-free savings account. The name is misleading because it sounds like a savings account at a bank. It is not. It is a registered investment account where anything you put inside it can be invested in stocks, ETFs, bonds, GICs, and it grows completely tax-free. When you take it out, you pay nothing to the CRA, nothing. By 2024, if you have been eligible since 2009, your cumulative room is $95,000. If you arrived more recently, your room starts from the year you became a Canadian resident or citizen. Check your MyCRA account online to see your exact room. Do not guess. Your third priority is the RRSP, the Registered Retirement Savings Plan. The RRSP reduces your taxable income today. Every dollar you put into an RRSP comes off the top of what the government taxes you on this year. That refund you get in spring, that is not the government being generous. That is your own money coming back to you. The RRSP is especially powerful if your income is in a higher tax bracket. The fourth account, and this one is newer, is the FHSA, the First Home Savings Account, which combines the tax deduction of an RRSP with the tax-free withdrawal of a TFSA, specifically for people buying their first home in Canada. If that applies to you, this account is one of the strongest tax tools the government has ever offered. You do not need to understand every detail today, but you need to know the order. TFSA first for most people, RRSP second if your income is high enough to benefit from the deduction. FHSA if home ownership is in your near-term plan. Step 3. Stop treating caution and inaction as the same thing. This one is psychological, and it matters more than almost anything else I will say today. There's a version of caution that protects you. That is the version I used when I parked my severance and took time to learn before I moved. That is intelligent. That is what experience looks like. And then there's a version of caution that is actually fear wearing a responsible mask. That is the version where someone says, I want to be sure before I invest. And 3 years later, they have still not made a single move. Not because they did not learn, but because learning became a substitute for acting. Vanguard's research quantified this. The return gap between investors who hold cash out of fear and those who stay invested in diversified products is real. It compounds quietly. You do not feel it in year 1. You feel it in year 10 when you look at what your account could have been. The practical shift is this. Give yourself a finite study window. 60 days is enough to understand the TFSA and a simple index ETF. At the end of 60 days, you move something, even if it is $50. The behavior matters more than the amount at the beginning because the habit is what compounds, not just the money. If you want a simple starting point that requires very little research, a TFSA invested in a single asset allocation ETF, something like XBAL or VGRO, gives you a globally diversified portfolio in one product with no stock picking required. You do not have to become a financial analyst. You just have to start. Step 4, audit what you already have and where it's sitting. Most people reading this have money in more than one place and have never mapped it. They have a savings account from when they first arrived, maybe a checking account with more in it than necessary, maybe an employer pension they filled out a form for and never thought about again, maybe some foreign assets in the country they came from. Sit down this week and write out every account you have, every one, including foreign accounts, including employer benefits, including any insurance products that have a cash value. You cannot make good decisions about where your money should go if you do not know where it already is. Then look at each one and ask 3 questions. Is this money growing? Is it growing in a tax-efficient way? And do I have access to it when I actually need it? That last question matters because one of the mistakes people make is locking money away in products that are not liquid without keeping a genuine emergency buffer outside of it. 3 to 6 months of living expenses in a high-interest savings account or a TFSA in a cash equivalent product. That buffer is not a waste. That buffer is what keeps you from being forced to sell investments at a bad time because an emergency arrived. Step 5, treat the knowledge as the first investment. And I said earlier that when I got to Canada, I did not know the system. 2 decades of experience across 4 continents, and I still had to start learning from scratch because every country's financial structure is different. That is not a failure. That is just reality. And the people who succeed financially in Canada, whether they have been here for 2 years or 30, are the ones who accepted that reality and invested in understanding the rules of the specific game they are now playing. The CRA website is free. The Financial Consumer Agency of Canada has plain language guides on every registered account. Your bank will sit with you for an hour and walk through your options at no cost. There are fee-only financial planners in Canada who charge a flat rate and give you unbiased advice without selling you a product. These resources exist. The knowledge is the first investment because without it, every other investment is a guess. And guessing with money you cannot replace is how people end up starting over at an age when they should be coasting. I'm not saying avoid all risk. I'm saying understand what you are taking on before you take it on. There is a version of safe that is actually expensive, and there is a version of educated risk that is actually the most protective thing you can do for your family's future. A windfall is not a reward. It is a test of whether you know what to do when money actually shows up. The accounts exist. The contribution room exists. The only variable left is your strategy. If you want to pass the test, hit subscribe right now. In the next part of this series, we are mapping out the exact 6-step framework every Canadian needs to deploy capital across the TFSA, rrsp, fhsa, and resp in the correct order. I'll show you the 5 critical financial mistakes people make in their first year that destroy these accounts and the exact reasons I chose Wealth Simple over Questrade to execute it all. The structure is ready. Subscribe and let's secure it.